Today's daf we're going to be learning is Avodah Zarah daf Yubet. Today's daf is sponsored with gratitude to HaKadosh Baruch Hu by Tina and Shalom Lam on the occasion of the Brit and the naming of their grandson Shiloh Lavi, born to their children Bracha and Akiva Berger. Mazal tov. Okay, one other announcement I'll make, which is that around July 25th, I believe it is, or 26th, I'll be out of the country for a few weeks. So there will be no regular Zoom. All the shiurim are being pre-recorded. I've gotten to some of them. The war delayed me a little bit. But I will mention in the context of dedications that if you have dedications for the summer and you want to get them in early, if you get them in now, hopefully I haven't yet recorded those dapim and I'll be able to announce them in the class. If not, any of the dedications for that month, basically from the 24th to the 25th or something till around the 20, I don't remember the exact dates, but 20-something of August, maybe 25th of August, they'll just end up in the text without being announced in the class. Okay, so if you want to hurry and get them in early, that will be helpful. Okay, we're now going to get started. We have a very easy daf, kind of short daf also, which is nice. These dapim definitely seem to be shorter and simpler than Shavuot dapim. Okay, we're going to get started from the Mishnah again. We'll review the Mishnah since we have time. We talked about a city that had Avodah Zarah, okay? Chutz ala mutar, and a chutz Avodah Zarah toch ala mutar. So we have a city, we have outside the city. And there's different practices in and outside the city. Whatever's forbidden where the idol worship is going on is not forbidden where the idol worship is not going on. Now, there's a bit of a debate what case the Mishnah is talking about, both in this Mishnah and the next Mishnah, which we're going to end our daf with, about whether we're talking about during the holiday, whether we're talking about overall in general, because the stuff is going to idol worship. It's unclear. Okay, I'll just put that issue out there. Rashi says it's talking about when there's a holiday specifically. Okay, the Rambam has a different interpretation. Okay, now the Gemara had asked, Hechi dami chutzala. So the first version of the sugya was, what does it mean chutzala? To which Reish Lakish answered in the name of Rabbi Chanina, like the lozav aza, which obviously doesn't help us so much. We don't really know exactly what they mean, but it seems to be possibly a bazaar, a butcher, slaughtering house, something right outside the city. And that already is considered outside the city, and you can do your business dealings there, which is interesting because you would think that right outside the city, people from inside the city would shop there, but somehow they seem to say no. Now we started the second version. In the second version, it was that Reish Lakish asked Rabbi Chanina the question, how do we treat the lozav aza? And then it seems like maybe the lozav aza is even, is more close. It's unclear exactly how this connects to chutzala, but lozav shel aza mahu, what's the law there? And Amar la, and he answers him in a kind of funny way. He says, what, have you never been in Sur, which is Tyre, in Lebanon, which was obviously a city where there were a lot of Jews and Gentiles that were mixed together. In other words, they did things together. As, for example, did you never see the Yisrael, have you never seen, right? Right? We don't usually see this kind of thing, but a Jew and a Gentile cooking on the same fire, one with his pot, one with her pot, one with her pot, and they both have pots right next to each other, and lo chashulem chachamim, and chachamim weren't concerned for anything. So therefore, why would you be concerned with, now the assumption is here, the proximity of doing business in the city, outside the city, right? It's not a problem. They don't mix, okay? It's like two things that might be right next to each other, but they don't mix, basically. Okay. Now, well, maybe, basically. So the question is, what is this similarity? And number one, why were the Chachamim not concerned? And what should have they theoretically been concerned for, that they were not concerned about the two pots? And how do we make the comparison here? We're going to have three possible answers. And whether they are just each bringing possibilities, which is one way of looking at the sugya, and some of the commentaries look at it like that. Some of them, like Rashi, goes that there's a progression here. And we're getting from more lenient to more strict as we go on. So we're going to go with Rashi and explain it this way. So Abai is going to bring the first one, then Rava, then Rabba Bar Ula. Abai says, what's the concern, the potential concern that we're not actually concerned for with the food? Mishum basar nevela. Okay, lo amrina. We're not worried that what's basar nevela, non-slaughtered meat, right? Generally, Gentiles don't have kosher slaughters, so we have a non-kosher meat right next to my meat, and we're lo amrina. We're not concerned. What could we have been concerned with? Well, we're not concerned. Dilma mahadar api Yisrael achora. Maybe the Jew will turn around, not be looking, and while the Jew's not looking, maybe the Gentile will take their meat and plop it in the pot of the Jew. Okay, we're not worried about that. Now, if we were worried about that, what would that be? That would be an Isur D'Oraita, right? That would be eating nevela, which is totally forbidden by Torah law. And this is why he's the most lenient position. Because he's saying, even if the issue is an Isur D'Oraita, we're not going to be concerned for it. Now, what's the Isur D'Oraita by us? Dekavateh hachanami lo chashu lem chachamim mishum demei avodah zarah. What would be a D'Oraita issue here? We learned that lo yidbak biyadcha me'umah min ha'cherem. You cannot benefit at all from the cherem. So the potential D'Oraita issue here could be that maybe when you get paid by this Gentile who's buying something from you outside the city, in your bazaar, in your shuk, and whatever it is, and they give you money, if they live right next to the city of the idol worshippers, maybe they got the money from a sale of an animal to someone who was planning to sacrifice the animal to an idol. And then that's called Dimei Avodah Zarah. And that Dimei Avodah Zarah will then go to you, and you'll end up benefiting from a sale of idol worship. Now, some people say, don't accept this explanation, because they say that's not forbidden. That's already too distant, right? We don't go that far, okay? But some people say, no, that's right. Rashi believes this is under Lo Yidbak B'yadcha Me'umah min ha'cherem. That's how he explains Dimei Avodah Zarah. Okay, there are other interpretations because people don't think that that's actually problematic. But anyway, we'll go with this. And stuff, right, is a concern for a D'Oraita issue, and yet we're not concerned. So it's the most lenient position, because we're going to go D'Oraita, D'Rabanan, and then even light D'Rabanan. Okay? And then if you're saying we're not concerned for, let's say, we go the last one, a light D'Rabanan, we'd be concerned for a regular D'Rabanan, and we'd certainly be concerned if it was a D'Oraita issue. So that's going to be that's why we're going to get more lenient as we go along, because again, more strict as we go along. Because the first one says, even if it's an Isur D'Oraita, we're not concerned. Okay, that doesn't concern us. We're not worried that you're going to end up with this money of Avodah Zarah money. Rava Amar Mai Lo Chashulem Chachamim. Second interpretation. Mishum Bishulei Ovdei Kochavim. We're going to get to the sugya, very famous sugya, about not having Gentiles cook for you. Okay, so now, if I'm cooking in my pot next to my Gentile friend, could be I'll say, oh, listen, I'm going for a few minutes. Can you cook my food for me? Now, when we get to the sugya b'shul akum, you'll see that's not actually a problem, but it would have to be in a way that was a problem. Let's say I took it off the flame, and then I asked the Gentile to put it back on for me in a few minutes, and it wasn't yet cooked at all, or not cooked a third of the way. Okay, we'll get into all those details, but in case you know them already, you'll realize that, don't worry, this somehow can be explained in that way. But we're not concerned about bishul akum, which again is a rabbinic issue, as I said, because we're going Torah to rabbinic to lighter rabbinic. So this is a rabbinic prohibition. What's the concern? Concern is if they cook for you, it might lead you to eat together with them, which might lead you to marry them. So we want to avoid marriage with Gentiles. That's an Isur D'Oraita. This is a Gzerah. So because of this rabbinic concern, we're not concerned about that. Okay, so we're not concerned that they're going to end up cooking your food if you're cooking together in two different pots on the same flame. Now, what's the connection here? What's the D'Rabanan? Well, the D'Rabanan is doing business, right, with the Gentiles. We'll see right now. Also here. Lo chashulem chachamim mishum yom edam. Now notice it says yom edam, their holiday. Not the days before the holiday, but their holiday itself. Holiday itself is obviously more strict, or seemingly, let me see from here, than the days before the holiday. So now we're going to talk about the Chachamim aren't worried on the day of the holiday that maybe, right, remember, I'm doing business outside the city. Maybe it'll leave me, I'll end up doing business with someone in the city. Okay, we're not worried about that. That's the Rabbanan issue here. But again, according to this, if it was a D'Oraita issue, we would be concerned. It's just there wasn't a D'Oraita issue. Third option. Rabba bar Ula amar lo chashulem chachamim mishum tzinora. Tzinora means spritzing. We're not worried about, let's say they're cooking in their pot, that the meat, the sauce from their pot spritzes over into my pot. That might be what you would think is the most concerning thing, because that really could happen. Now, this is already much more lenient. Why is it much more lenient? Because if it did, it would be nullified anyway, right? It's just, maybe you don't really want it to happen. But, maybe you say, well, maybe it's, so then don't put yourself in the situation where it's there. But it's already a much lighter concern because of Dine Bitul, of nullification. So they're not worried about stuff spritzing over. So now we're getting even farther, not the holiday itself, but before the holiday. Even before the holiday, we're not concerned because, again, the majority of all the inhabitants here are not idol worshippers. We're not worried that maybe an idol worshipper is going to come and buy from you and that you'd end up doing business before their holiday. Okay, now we're going back to the Mishnah. The second part of the Mishnah, which I didn't review right now, is, are you allowed to go into a city while they're celebrating their holiday, it seems. Okay, so an idolatrous city while they're celebrating their holiday. I can't go in the city if this road leads only to the city, and beyond, right, if I get into the city, there's nowhere to go other than the city and other than coming back out where I came from. If it leads to another city, let's say on the other side, I can walk through the city and get to the city on the other side, then we're not worried. What's the issue? Obviously, it's a Marit Ayin issue. It looks like I'm going into the city to worship idols. Because if they're doing their holiday and I walk in on their holiday, that's Marit Ayin. Whereas, if there's somewhere else to go through the city, then nobody's going to think that the Jew is going there to worship idols. They'll assume I'm trying to get through to get to the city on the other side. So that's what the Mishnah had said. But now we're going to see a Braita where this is actually a point of debate between Rabbi Meir and the rabbis. Rabbi Meir's opinion doesn't appear in our Mishnah. So Ma'ulei l'sham v'chulei, that's a quote from the Mishnah. Tanu Rabbanan, here's the Braita. Ir sheyesh b'avodah zarah, asur l'kanes l'tocha, v'lo mitocha li'ir acheret. If they're an idol-worshipping city, and presumably we mean while they're celebrating their holiday, you can't go into that city and not even to get through to another town. Okay, you can't do that. Tivrei Rabbi Meir. That's what Rabbi Meir said. Chachamim omrim kozman shaderech miyuchedet lo to makom asur. If it's a path just to that city, then it'll be forbidden. But ein haderech miyuchedet lo to makom mutal. As we already saw, this is the rabbi's opinion that appears in our Mishnah, which is if it's not miyuchedet lo to makom, but you can get through that path to other places, then it's permitted. Now we're going to move to 4 cases of you're not allowed to bow down in front of an idol, even if you're doing you have a different reason for bowing down. Okay, this is known and famous, right? You can't bow down to do an action when there's an idol right there, even if you're not bowing down to the idol, right? It's like a davar she'eino mitkavin, right? You're not intending to do that. You're intending to bow down to, we'll see. Okay, and we're going to have 4 cases. Obviously, the question is going to be, why do you need 4 cases for this? Okay, yes, the story of Hanan Shabbat Baneh is the famous, talks about this. Okay, so Yashav lo kot b'fnei avodah zarah. You have a splinter in your foot, and you want to get it out. Lo yishchev yitlena. Yishchev means to bow down. Don't bow down to take out the thorn or the splinter. Mipnei shenireh mishtachaveh l'avodah zarah. Because it looks like you're bowing to the idol. Now, the simple reading of Eimeno nireh would be if nobody sees you doing it, right? There's no one around. Later, the Gemara is going to say it can't possibly be that. So we're not going to really explain this term yet. But if it's not seen, okay, we're going to explain what this means later, then mutar. Okay, then it's permitted. Case 2. You drop your wallet and all your money scatters all over the place, and some of it's right in front of the idol, and you want to bow down to pick it up. Lo yishchev yitzleim, you can't bow down to pick up that money because mipnei shenireh mishtachaveh l'avodah zarah, looks like you're bowing down to the idol. Okay, you can see what the Gemara is obviously going to ask, why do we need all these cases? What's unique about each one? We got it already the first time. We certainly got it the second time. Now we're going to do a third time. But first, eimeno nireh, same thing. If it's not nireh, whatever this means, mutar, it'll be permitted. Ma'ayan hamoshech lifnei avodah zarah. You have a spring that's right in front of the idol. That's, flowing in front of the idol. Lo yishchev yishted. Don't bow down to drink from the spring. Mipnei shenireh mishtachaveh l'avodah zarah, because again, you look like you're bowing to the idol. V'eimeno nireh mutar. Same thing. If it's not seen, it's permitted. Now we have a 4th case, which is a little bit different. Partsufot. We have a statue of a person. I'm sure you've seen this in many places. particularly, I guess, European countries where there's a fountain, or maybe all other places, but there's a fountain with water streaming out from the mouth. Okay, there's like a person statue with a water fountain coming out of their mouth, and people drink from there. It's a spring that people drink from that's coming out of the mouth of this statue. Partsufot hamikalchim mayim likrachim. So there's these statues, faces of people that are streaming water to the cities. Lo yaniach piv al piem v'yishteh. Okay? Don't put your mouth on their mouth. By the way, in Colorado Springs, if you've ever been, they have all these springs coming out of the walls there, and they have things like this also. Don't put your mouth on their mouth, because the water's coming out of their mouth, and that's how people would drink. But if you put your mouth by their mouth, what does it look like? So this is different. It's not like you're bowing. That's why this one's a little bit different. It looks like you're kissing a statue. Kayotsebo. Now, here we get off on a total tangent, and that's going to take us on our daf on a totally different sugya. Kayotsebo, by the way, if we're talking about drinking water from fountains and springs and things like that, lo yaniach piv silon v'yishted. Don't put your mouth on a pipe with this water streaming out and drink, mipnei sakana, because this is dangerous. Okay? Now, what's the danger? We're going to talk about it later. The danger is there's leeches in the water. And if you take it straight from the pipe, you don't see the water, and you might actually drink a leech, and then you'll end up with parasites, and you could die from that. Okay, so that we're going to get off on a whole tangent on our favorite Gemaras about all sorts of remedies, what you do if you've done that, and how to avoid it, and all that, and we'll get to some evil spirit as well. Okay, Ma'ino nireh. So now the Gemara wants to know, we finished these 4 statements, what is this Eino nireh? Okay, this, by the way, was the end of that Braita that why did we quote this? Because it was at the end of the Braita where we were bringing Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir and the rabbis. Sorry. Now, first they're going to deal with what's this Eino nireh, and then they're going to deal with what was the purpose of the 4 cases. So, Ma Eino nireh. If, like we would have assumed, nobody sees you do it, then you could do it, right? You check, you look, no one's there. You're like, okay, great, I could do this. But no. What's the problem? Ha'amar Rav Yehuda Marav. This is very famous. Even though marit ayin is, we're worried someone's going to see you do something and think that it's permitted, or right. Well, even in a closed room, chadrei chadarim sounds like even in a room inside a room, and there's nobody there, and it's clear there's nobody there, and nobody's watching, you still can't do it. So therefore, you can't bow down in front of an idol, no matter what, whether someone sees you, whether they don't see you. So what does this Eino nireh? Ela ema, read it like this. If it doesn't look like you're bowing to the idol, like for example, you want to take out your splinter, and the idol's in front of you, so you turn around, and your back is to the idol, and you're bowing in the other direction. Okay, that's kind of obvious, but the point is, if you can do it in such a way, I guess they're giving you almost the solution. If you can do it in another way that doesn't look like you're bowing, then it's permitted. Okay, I'm just going to go back for a minute because I see someone asked and maybe I wasn't clear enough. But the case about the leech and drinking from a pipe has nothing to do with Avodah Zarah. Totally off topic. It's just once we were talking about drinking from fountains, we started talking about drinking from pipes. Not connected at all. Okay, now we're going to do it tzricha. What do we need all these 4 cases for? To eat Tana coats, if you said the coats case, the splinter, mishum de efshal lemezel kameu mishkale, you can always walk a few feet and go take it off, go take the splinter out somewhere else. So there's an alternative, and that's why it's not permitted. However, you might have thought of but your money falls. You have to bend down in front of the idol because that's where your money is, and you're not going to bend down somewhere else. It's not going to be helpful. You're not going to get your money back. So you might have thought, maybe it's not forbidden, and that's why you needed to say, no, it's forbidden as well. Let's flip it. What if you just have money? Well, demamona, that's just because it's money. So we'll say, okay, you'll lose your money. What's the big deal? But you have a splinter. That's painful. And maybe we'll allow you to do it so you can not have to cope with the pain. So maybe it won't be forbidden. So that explained the first 2. Let's say you had those 2. Okay? And you said those 2 are not allowed. That's because mishum deleka sakana, because there's no danger. However, avamayan. But if you're thirsty and there's a spring there and you need to drink, right? It could be dangerous not to drink water. Di'ika sakana, di'ilo shate mayit. If you don't drink, you're going to die. Eimalo, you might say, oh, maybe it's permitted. This isn't forbidden. Tzricha. That's why you need it. Now, this is a little bit strange. This is saying, mishum pikuach nefesh. If I'm going to die because I don't have water now, we all know you don't die just from not having water. You do die if you don't have water over a prolonged period of time, and it could lead you to die. So what are they talking about here? Some people say, what do you mean? Yareg val yavor, Avodah Zarah. Okay, but this isn't really Avodah Zarah because this just looks like Avodah Zarah. And what? Pikuach nefesh, you're dying and you need water. You haven't had water for days, and if you don't drink water, you're going to die. We won't let you do this. So there's a bit of a debate about this whole pikuach nefesh, like what this means, sakana. The best option I saw was to say that what we really mean is this could lead eventually to danger. Right now it's not, but it's an issue that potentially could be life-threatening were it to get more extreme. And that's because it's in the range on a scale of could lead to danger, so maybe drinking water is different than if you're thirsty and you need water. Maybe it's different than the others, which is just, okay, it's uncomfortable to have a splinter, or my money, which really is less. But maybe, right, this is a topic, the issue of not drinking water is something that theoretically could be a dangerous issue, even though right now it's obviously not pikuach nefesh, because if it was, of course, you'd be able to do. That's a better explanation. Okay, so therefore we need those. Now what's left? The fountain. So now we're going to have a very interesting answer about the fountain, because really that fountain doesn't add anything more. Now it happens to be a little different from the other cases, because it's the issue of kissing the idol, but all the more so that would be worse than bowing down near it, which, maybe could be interpreted as two different things. Here, actually kissing the idol. Anyway, the Gemara is going to answer an interesting answer. Partsufot lamali. Mishum de kabay lemine kayotze bo leyanech piv al gabei hasilam v'yashem mipnei hasakana. The whole reason why they brought this was they wanted to get to the tangent. This is funny, because usually we tangent off. Once we're in something, we tangent off. This is saying the reverse. We specifically brought this case number 4 because they wanted to tell you, don't drink from pipes because of the danger of leeches. It's almost like they wanted to stick that in because they wanted people to know that, and they wanted some connection to something. So once they had the 3 cases, they said, oh, let's talk about this 4th case where you can't drink water, and then we can get from there to don't drink from pipes because of the leeches. And almost because it was so dangerous, they wanted to kind of say, let's do it like this. Okay? So you can't drink directly from this pipe because of this danger. Now, they didn't say the danger yet. I told you it was leeches because it was hard to understand without that. But now the Gemara is going to say, my sakana, what is the danger here? Aluka. So we have, again, a strange... Now, first of all, this is just an answer. It doesn't necessarily mean this is the only way to read it. But the way they read it is instead of, since we had case 4, we tangented off to the issue of the leeches. They brought case 4 so that we could get to the case of the leeches. Tanu Rabbanan. Now, since we're already on leeches, we're going to talk about all sorts of concerns for leeches in other situations. Lo yishte adam. So we bring a braita. Okay, we're at the top of Amud Bet now. Lo yishte adam mayim lo min ha'na'arot v'lo min ha'agamim lo b'piv v'lo b'yado achad. When you're drinking now, you have to remember they didn't have water fountains, they didn't have sinks, right? What did they do? They drank from the river. But often they would, take a bucket, bring the water, or from the well or whatever it might be. But they would take the water out in a vessel, and then you could easily check the water. But if you're going to go straight to the river or the lake and drink directly, don't do that. Because if you just drink directly from the water, just like from the pipe, you might drink a leech. You can't really tell. You might swallow a leech. V'lo b'yado achad. And if you take the water one-handed out of the water, the assumption is when people drink one-handed, they don't really look at the water. Whereas if you do 2 hands, I guess with one hand, the water's quickly spilling out. You just kind of drink it quickly. Whereas when you do it with 2 hands, you have the proper ability to check and really look for leeches. So, one-handed, no. 2-handed, yes. Ve'im shata damo b'rosho mipnei hasakana. If you drink it, well, you could die because it's very dangerous. You can see the rabbis were really worried about these parasites and were warning the people, don't do these kind of things because you could die. My sakana, what's the danger? Sakanat aluka. Again, the Braita didn't mention what the danger was, but the Gemara tells us it's for the leeches. Misayele Rabbi Chanina. Now this supports the statement of Rabbi Chanina. Da'amar Rabbi Chanina, haboleani mashamayim. If you drink one of these leeches in the water, mutar lahachem lo chamim b'Shabbat. You can boil up water on Shabbat. The remedy, obviously, was drink hot water. So you can boil water on Shabbat, which is obviously totally forbidden, but you're allowed to do this because of pikuach nefesh. Apropos, we were talking about that just before. So here, this is life-threatening, and therefore you're allowed to boil water. And in fact, there was a case where somebody did this. They swallowed this leech. Rabbi Nechemia permitted them to boil up water on Shabbat. Now, if this ever were to happen to you, okay, here's some advice. In the meanwhile, before the water boils, okay, while you're waiting for the water to boil, you need to do something to prevent you from immediately dying. So to tide you over till you get the boiled water, you should swallow vinegar. You should drink vinegar. The vinegar will help at least prevent you from dying quicker and buy you some time while they're boiling water. They didn't have these hot water boilers that boil water in 3 minutes or instant hot in your sink, right? So it took some time for them to get the fire going, boil the water. While you're waiting for that to happen, you should drink some vinegar. Amr of Idi Bar Avin, apropos this topic. Haiman debala zibura, if you swallow a hornet, machya lo chayu, you will not survive. You will definitely die. However, if you want to buy yourself some time, mihu lishkaya reviata dechala shamgaz, you should drink this very strong vinegar, or revi'at of it, a quarter of a log of this very strong vinegar. Afshar, it might dechayi porta, it might give you a little bit of time. Adim mafkid abete. For what purpose do you need to buy time? Right? You need to buy time to be able to tell your family what you want. You know, like all of a sudden you're about to die. You want a few minutes to say, this is what I want you to do with my money, right? Your last words that you want to impart to your children or to your family, right? Whether it be, you know, generally when they talk about it here, they mean the financial arrangements, but you might have other more, you know, emotional things you want to pass on, final last words. So if you want to buy yourself some time, drink some of this very strong vinegar and you'll survive a little bit longer. Or maybe, it says. Okay, next concern, Shavriri, we're going to talk about now. Shavriri was an evil spirit that was known to be connected with blindness, but it seems from here also it was life-threatening. And interestingly, Tanu Abanan, the Braita says, Lo yishteh adam mayim balayla. Don't drink water at night. Okay, we're not talking about the issue of the water that was left overnight and the poison that the snake put in. Here we're talking about don't drink water at nighttime at all because of this evil spirit. Okay, v'im shata, if you did, damo b'rosho, just like we said before, you're likely to die. Mipnei sakana, because of the danger. Now, my sakana, this sakana is not the sakana of leeches. Sakana shavriri. We're worried about the evil spirit called shavriri. V'it sache, my takante. What if you're thirsty at night? I mean, people get thirsty at night. What, you're not going to drink water? So what do? Well, i'ika achrina bahadei, if there's somebody else with you, litri, wake them up, v'leimale tzachinamayim, and tell them you're thirsty for water. Now, why would this help? Because the evil spirit was known to get to people when they were alone. If there's someone with them, they won't come. So just wake up the person so that it's clear there's someone with you and start talking to them and say, hey, listen, you know, I'm very thirsty. And then the shavriri will say, oh, I'm not going to come here because there's somebody there, somebody else there. Now, ilo, what if you're alone? You don't have another person. So make it seem like you have another person. So you should bang on these jugs you have, okay? Just start banging, making noise as if there's someone there, and then start talking as if you're talking to someone. But the speech here should be an incantation, because this incantation will help prevent the shavriri from getting there. Planya bar planita, you say your name. Amalach imech is daher, your mother said, be wary of shavrire, berire, rire, yeri, ri, bekase chivare. Okay, your mother said beware of shavriri. And now if you notice, they get rid of a letter each time. Get rid of the shin, berire, they get rid of the bet, rire, they get rid of the resh, yeri, get rid of the yud, ray. Okay, this is like people saying Nachman, 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 Me'ulman. They say it like that, Nana, Nachman. So it's like that, it's the reverse. Bekase chavire, in white cups. Okay, so beware of shavriri who comes in white cups, and you say it in this type of incantation, and that will help you. Okay, again, we've talked about this before, that, you know, first of all, we don't really have this whole thing about evil spirits so much anymore, although I guess some people still believe in some of these kind of things, and we don't really take the advice of them when it comes to medicinal issues, but anyway, take it or leave it, that's our sugya. Now, getting back to the next Mishnah. And as I said in the previous Mishnah, also here it's not exactly clear what we're talking about, but like what situation we're discussing. We have a city with idol worship. And Rashi says again, like he did in the previous, we're talking about on their holiday. Okay, Rashi says, Derech hovdei kochavim liot lahem yom shuk v'yiri b'yom edam. Usually you have like a big sale going on during their holidays, okay, like Christmas sales, things like that. So they have a big marketplace, which makes sense because it's not just about buying gifts for the holiday, but it could be gifts, it could be gifts for their idols, it could be, right, that. Now, the Rambam had a different interpretation, okay, whether we're talking about maybe just a city of idol worship in general during the year, not necessarily in their holidays. So if you have a city of idol worshippers, okay, apropos Christmas, right? You ever go to storefronts and Christmas time, everything's decorated with Christmas decorations. So here, if you have these adornments for the idols in the store, as opposed to ones that are not in the store, that don't have these decorations in the store, so we're going to distinguish between stores that have decorations for the idols and stores that don't. So they don't yet say what to do with it, but they bring it in a bit of an interesting way. So if you have this city with stores that are decorated and stores that are not, there was a case in Beit Sham. The rabbi said, so the ones, right, it sounds like funny, mutarot, okay, but the ones that are decorated are forbidden, and the ones that are not decorated are permitted. You can shop in those stores. What's the issue? Good question. So we're going to have Reish Lakish, and you'll have to wait till tomorrow to see Rabbi Yochanan. Different approaches as to what the issue is. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, and with this we'll finish. Lo shanu ela mutarot bevered vehadas. We're talking about decorated with roses and myrtle branches because those have beautiful smells. Now, when they put them in their store for the honor of the idol, and you go into that store and you smell the beautiful smell, you're actually benefiting from idol worship. Okay, so this is very different from what we would call Christmas decorations, right? This has nothing to do with that. This is saying you're actually benefiting from the smell of those items, and those are put up for idol worship, right? Very different from Christmas decorations that are not there to worship, right? As part of it's not for their idol worship. So, mutarot, right, it's really, they're doing it for sales purposes to get people to come to their store. You're enjoying the smell, right? And that we learned about. We're going to see in a second what the source is. So I'll hold off for 1 second. They just put up nice fruits to decorate their store. That's permitted. My time. What's the reason? You're not allowed to benefit. So if they just put fruits, you're not actually benefiting from those fruits. They don't have such a smell that you walk in and you say, wow, what a beautiful smell, and enjoy it. If it's something that smells, it's a problem. If it doesn't smell, it's not a problem, because what's forbidden? Not to enjoy anything from there. Now, what does it say? Enjoy. But to make others enjoy, meaning that you're giving them money because you're buying their stuff, that's not forbidden. That's why Rashi is a little bit difficult, because isn't it before the holiday? You're not allowed to do business, right? It makes more sense if we're talking about when it's not the holiday, but yet decorated, for their idol, then, you might be aiding idol worship, but maybe that's not a problem then. Anyway, we'll take Rashi at face value, even though it's a little bit difficult. So in any case here, we're saying it's permitted to benefit, it's forbidden to benefit, but to cause them, the owner to benefit is not a problem. Okay, we're going to see Rabbi Yochanan was a different approach, and that's really the accepted approach here about why we distinguish between these types of stores and those types of stores, and we'll get to that tomorrow. So what did we do today? Quick review. We started with the comparison of the Luza of Azad. We saw there were two versions of this conversation, or passing on words of Reish Lakish of Rabbi Chanina, or he asked Rabbi Chanina, and Rabbi Chanina answered with this parable, this comparison to the two people cooking on one pot, and the rabbis were on one stove, and they weren't worried about it in two different pots. What were they not worried about, and how did that compare to our case? We saw three different possibilities. Then we went back and saw our Mishnah, the issue of going through the city to get to another city. Ends up being this big machloket between Rabbi Meir and the rabbis. So our opinion was just the rabbis. Rabbi Meir doesn't allow it at all. From there, that Braita got off on these four cases of not doing something that looks like you're either bowing down or kissing the idol. From there, we got into the issue of the aluka, of the concern of drinking water from pipes and other cases of drinking water that might cause you to swallow a leech. And what do you do if you swallow a leech? And what if you do to avoid, if you're thirsty at night and you want to drink, and there's a separate problem of the shavriri, evil spirit. So we got into all that. And then we ended with these decorated stores, not decorated stores, and we started with Reish Lakish, and we'll see Rabbi Chanina tomorrow as to what the issue is in the Mishnah. With that, we finish for today. Wishing everyone a good day.